probably more light in the room. So last Sunday was the first Sunday in Advent, and the first Sunday of Advent is the Sunday of hope. The hope for new possibilities, the hope of the light of the world. And this Sunday is the second Sunday of Advent. And it depends on who's talking, but I'm going to say that today we're going to focus on faith, because once you have the hope, you need the faith to move forward into it. But it's not just Advent, it's Hanukkah. I forgot to tell you to bring it up. I knew this one was here. So, Hanukkah, this is the 8th day of Hanukkah. There will be 8 candles tonight. And so we're lighting all of these. Now I know some of you know the song, oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Come on, let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Svivanim to play with Levivo to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. That's only 2 of the 29 holy days between the 1st of December and the 6th of January. So, there's a reason why some of us say happy holidays. Now, in the Christian tradition, we have a history that's fascinating to me, because when the Emperor of Rome, Constantine, had this vision, in hoc signo, in this sign shall you conquer, in this sign shall you hold the empire together. He saw what some people think is a sword, and other people think is a cross. And so he accepted it as a cross. Well, his mother was a Christian. He kind of understood about that. So she went to the Holy Lands and she said, ah, here is where Jesus was born. Ah, here is where Jesus died. Ah, here is where he was resurrected. And those became the holy sites. It's wonderful. Helena, thank you. And he called together all the leaders. He said, now show me what your text is. Show me what your rules are. Show me what your creed is. And they said, what? We've got 1,000 different texts. And each community practices this thing their own way. So they took a year to come up with what does it mean to be a Christian. And they wandered through all of these texts and they said, oh, no, it can't be that one. Oh, it can't be that one. And they had arguments and debates, and there were all these different positions that people took. And finally, at the end of the year, in 325 CE, Common Era, we had a Biblia, ta Biblia, or to Biblio, depending on whether you're Greek or Latin, and which we call the Bible. Now, nowhere in the Bible does it talk about Advent or Lent. Isn't that interesting? So, how did that happen? Well, it turns out that one of those guys hanging out at Nicaea was a man named Augustine. He was very well known. He was the bishop of his community, and he had already begun to be a popular writer about how this all works and everything else. And he said, I've learned something in my community. If we're going to have the whole Roman Empire become Christian, we cannot impose our ideas on these people. We have to adopt what is common already and adapt it to the Christian story. So all of those pagan rituals and ideas that got woven into Christianity are because of that, adopting and adapting. So one of them is that it takes 40 days to prepare for a major feast. And the major feasts, the two major feasts in Christianity, are Easter, which is the culmination of Passover in the Jewish tradition, and actually is the Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. Always, that's why its date moves around. And the Christmas celebration. Now, Christmas, the Christ Mass, was already adopted and adapted because it is the culmination of the solstice. 21st through 25th. Now I'm going to talk more about that on the 23rd because we'll be in the middle of it. But that date was selected as an adopting what was already being celebrated in order to make it work for the people of the provinces of the Roman Empire. So we have to have our preparation time, which we are adopting and adapting. And at the springtime, there's 40 days prior to the Feast of Easter, and in the wintertime there is the 40, wait a minute, 40? 40? Wait a minute, this is the second Sunday. How did that work? So what happened?
The decorations go up on Halloween, I think that.
Very good. So in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, the 40 days are still honored. There is a saint in November, I think it's on the November 14th, and his day is the beginning of Advent, okay, his feast day. And they actually fast, like we heard about the Lenten fast. Some of you grew up in Catholic schools, yes. And no meat or whatever. They have different versions of the fast. And they're fasting and praying for 40 days starting the middle of November. Well, the Western folks weren't quite up to that. So, 40 days of fasting in the winter when all the crops are in and everything else. Are you kidding me? So they began to, winnow it down a little bit and make it not so much a fast and all that kind of thing. And so it got, down to 4 weeks, 4 Sundays. And if it happens that the last Sunday is December 24, then the morning is the 4th Sunday and the evening is Christmas Eve. Right? So, we adjust, we adopt and adapt and make it work to fit our schemes. Well, 4 Sundays actually usually starts the Sunday right after Thanksgiving. But that didn't work for a commercial culture because that's changing all the time, right? So, in order to be able to produce things that could be sold all over the world, the Germans, bless the German soul, created little advent calendars that were only 1 through 25. Right? And so we now have an Advent season that is little gifts or something for 1 through 25. So in the church you get your 4 Sundays, hopefully. It's a little tight in there on the 24th, but you can pull it off. And then the dates on the Advent calendar start December 1 and go through. Now, those German Advent calendars, they have chocolate in them. How can I fast and eat chocolate? The fast went out the door. And as you heard in our writing, the chalice lighting today, Advent is no longer about preparing for much of anything, except for getting all the gifts and the food and everything else together, right? So what happens? How do we transform something that got turned into a commercial process back into a spiritual experience? And that has been the goal of my adult life as far as Christmas is concerned. So I've shared with a number of you in small groups that when I realized I was going to actually be raising children, I realized that I did not want Christmas to be what it was in all the TV shows. I wanted it to be something more special than that. And when I was growing up, I was the only daughter of a single mom, and she liked Christmas, so that helped, the only child. So I got to be more involved with the adult version of Christmas, less in the childlike thing, which has some advantages. And one of the things that happened in her world was her office was in the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, which meant that was my babysitter. But starting the 1st of December, they had a festival of trees from all around the world downstairs in the basement of the museum. And so there would be from Japan, Christmas, okay, if you say so. But, you know, Sweden, Norway, France, Germany. So I learned all these different words about Christmas and all these different symbols, and it was very cool. And then once or twice during that time period, Mom would take me to dinner because they would do a meal each night to go with one of the countries. Isn't that cool? So I got a Swedish Christmas, or a German Christmas, or a French Christmas. It was really, really cool. And it began to wake me up to, from a very early age, the fact that it isn't always done the same way. And it also made the Christmas season a little longer than 24 hours, right? Which is what it is for far too many kids. So then one of those nights we would go wandering around the city of Chicago looking at the lights, and you can imagine. And then there was always the shopping trip downtown, and the windows at Marshall Fields, yes! And those of you who grew up around New York, and maybe even Union Square had it for a little while, beautiful windows, you know, and all the animals, and Santa Clauses and elves, and all of that. And there was the light and the sharing and the music and the Salvation Army band, not just the bells, but the trumpets and all of that. And all of that became for me what Christmas was about, and it started early in December. So as I said, I realized I was going to be raising these kids, and I wanted them to have some of that, and we didn't live anywhere near the Museum of Science and Industry or anywhere where there was a festival of trees or anything international. We lived in the inner city of Portland. What are we going to do now? So what I did is, well, it helped that their father was Catholic, so then there was a little bit of, you know, the Advent thing was already kind of woven into their life. So we started with the Advent candles on the 1st of December, and we did an Advent calendar, but what I would do is we would put the empty nativity out on the 1st of December, and then as the calendar and the candles got lit, they would put different things in the nativity. And at the beginning of December, the three kings are on the opposite sides of the house, and and all the way through to the 6th of January, we are moving those kings. So they got to the nativity on actually the night of the 5th, 12th night, because we went all the way through that whole period. So for my kids, Christmas lasted 6 weeks. And then on the 6th, or if it was a work day, the closest Saturday, we would take all of Christmas apart. Now the one thing that I carried forward from growing up is my grandmother made sure that on 12th night, all the Christmas food in the house was eaten or thrown away. Yeah, we were done with Christmas food by then. So, and she had always said just a little tiny bit of fruitcake, you know, just about 2 inches by 1 inch, you know, and she made hard sauce, and she put a little tiny red birthday candle on it and a holly leaf, and that was our 12th night dessert. So I made sure there was something special. My kids did not like fruitcake. Like most of the people in this room, I think. So, I do too. Extending the season out and having it be about something is coming and something is happening was a big part of it. But then I realized we needed to have a bit more sharing going on here. So what I did with them is, you know, the first night was about launching the whole thing, but in the middle of the weeks between the lighting the candles, we would have different gift-making and gift-sharing events. So there were 3 or 4 of those each week, generally, you know, over the course of the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. And then Boxing Day, we honored Boxing Day. Now this is December 26th, and we made sure that if there was a helper, the mailman, whoever, we would make sure there was a little something for them. And the kids got to put that together. And then on Epiphany, which is Little Christmas in some traditions, we also did more gifts for more people. So the gifting and the sharing was part of it, but they had to make them. Poor kids. And so we came up with so many different fun things to make. It became one of the most creative times of the year. What I was attempting to do, besides extending the Christmas itself, was to shift their relationship to the event, right? Well, it turns out, guess what my kids do this time of year? They're now approaching 40, God help me. And they've got, yeah, some of them have kids of their own, and they are doing things like, making presents. And, giving things during that period before Christmas itself. And it's very cool to watch that they have shifted in their relationship with this holiday and made a difference in the world around them. And this is part of what we get to do now, is think about what is it that we've been taught this time of year is about, and decide what is it that I want it to be for me and the people that I love. There's a story that I won't take the time to read, but I often use it in my Christmas Eve service. And it's the story of Mike. Mike couldn't stand commercial Christmas. He hated all of this stuff, the decorations going out in October. There actually is a reason for that. When my various family members have been in the military, I had to get their package in the mail by the beginning of November. Yeah. So that's why there's a little bit of Christmas out in October, for those of us who couldn't get the package to folks in the military. So, in any case, the story, Mike couldn't handle the commercial stuff. Got sick and tired of it. And he was complaining and complaining and complaining, and his wife was going, oh no, what am I going to do for him for Christmas? He doesn't want me to shop. He doesn't want me to go out and buy him something special. Whatever am I going to do? Well, the kids were, in various sports, and their oldest son was in the wrestling team, and they went to watch a wrestling match, and there was a special match. And it happened that an inner city, they were a suburban family, and then the inner city church had sponsored a wrestling team. And this wrestling team had come out to the suburbs to compete with their own team. And she's looking at these kids, and their shoes, she says, it's like the only thing holding them on are the laces. Right? And they don't have the wrestling helmets that protect the head, and the ears, and they don't have any of the equipment. And she gets her inspiration. Now she knows what she's going to do. So she goes to the sporting store and she finds all the equipment, and she anonymously sends it to the church for the wrestling team. And then she makes a plain white envelope, and it says Mike on it, and she describes what has happened. And she sticks it on the tree. And it's the last thing on Christmas morning. And Mike lights up. It's just amazing. So she does it again. And again. For 10 years. Something like that. And each time she just describes where the funds have gone. And it's always the last thing on Christmas morning. And the kids would, by the second or third time, they're just going, what's in Papa's? What's in Daddy's envelope? What's on the floor hardly matters when it's time for Daddy to open the envelope, because he's just so exultant over it. As life goes on, however, the time comes and cancer takes over Mike's body and he passes on. And it's hard. We all know how hard it is when that happens. And it's almost impossible to actually get the tree up. The wife is just beside herself. But she does, and she does what she has always done. And she puts a white envelope in the tree, and then she goes to bed. And the next morning she comes down, and there are 3 more white envelopes. Each of the kids has done the same thing. So for that family, Advent became a time of how can I serve? What can I do in my community that'll make a difference? Wow. Yes. Now the church, whether it be Protestant or Catholic, is trying to help us wake up to something. Wake up to the presence of a power that is so great we can't even conceive of. And that power is best defined as a capital L, love. And it's got nothing to do with romance, right? It's got to do with what we just felt hearing that story. This 4-week period, these 4 candles, are designed to help us begin to realize there is something possible in the world that we have not allowed ourselves to experience thus far this year. And we need to let go of, that's what penance, repentance means, is rethink, let go of, release and replace the thoughts that have kept us from healing and feeling and knowing that love presence, that love power. And knowing that it is the only power. It looks as if there are other powers, but they can't exist because there is only one. Now in New Thought we say omnipresence and omnipotence means all that exists everywhere is that love power. Period. Wow. So over this period of Advent, I invite you each week, each day, each evening to take a few moments to be aware not only of what could be emerging, but feel love at work in your life. Feel how it has worked in the past. Feel how it is working now. Feel that power moving through you, your life, your family. Know that even when someone is leaving their body, all that exists is the love, and it remains. Know that every birth is the Christ child. And that can be a child that you have born, or that you've seen born, or that you're a grandparent or a great-grandparent for. It could also be a project that you have birthed. It is that love power embodied and ready to transform our lives. For so it truly is. Thank you.